So we're about halfway through the month of January in 2026. The energy has not changed that much. Keep talking to people who are in that mentality of new year, new me. I'm ready for change. This is going to be better. But the astrological energy hasn't shifted. We're still doing that thing that I've been talking about for the past few months where all of the old stuff is getting dredged to the surface. So it is one trigger after another if you're paying attention. Now, I just spent some time traveling. I spent some time with people that were really different. They aren't in this whole realm. And I'm always talking about astrology and I'm talking to people who are doing astrology readings. And there's a shared mindset usually with that. But some of the people that I was hanging out with or in contact with were really different, and they weren't looking at the world through the same lens, the same orientation that I was, which I found on some level to be refreshing. It's always interesting to be around people that are so different, that have such a different worldview and a way of orienting themselves in their lives. But it was also occurring to me that even those people were having their deep, dark stuff brought up for them. And even in the snippets of conversation that I was having, it was clear that they were being confronted with their own stuff in their own way, and we're all doing that. And I think that it's a good reminder that we are all a part of a massive collective. And within that collective, we are similar. We're all humans having a human experience. We all need to breathe oxygen. We all need to eat food. We all have to figure out some way to pay our bills and how to deal with head colds and going to the grocery store and whatever. We're all on the same playing field when it comes to the necessities of being human, but we're also incredibly different. So to assume that one size fits all, that everybody needs the same thing or can agree on the same thing, is just an exercise in futility. So before I get into the astrology of the week, I'm Natha Perkins of Electra Astrology, and this is the weekly forecast, the path ahead. January 12th through the 18th is what we're talking about today. And again, I'm not sharing the charts. The truth is that the astrology itself doesn't matter. This kind of work that I'm sharing with you, it's more about you listening and figuring out whether the things that I'm saying are making sense to you. Are they landing? Are they helping you to understand your own situations in a different way? And I hope the answer is yes. And that's probably why you're still here listening. Because this is such deep internal work. Whether you are conscious of the work that you're doing or not, we're all going through something that is such a big transitory time on the planet. So I want to point out that the North Node has been in the sign of Pisces at 10 degrees from January 31st all the way until January 14th. So we have been in this 10-degree North Node of Pisces for a while. And that's the nature of the nodes. They're mathematical points, but sometimes they get paused on a degree. And so there's something really important about that degree. This is the Sabian symbol of an aviator in the clouds. I talked about Sabian symbols last week too. I just find them a fascinating way to understand the energy of the moment. So 10 degrees of Pisces, inner landmarks. So take a minute and come into your body. Take a few deep breaths and just ground yourself. The energy of Pisces, as we have been dealing with for many years, the energy of Pisces is about finding that orientation inside of you. It's not about all of the external. We're very oriented to the external. I need to make a paycheck by doing this job, or I need to make sure that the cats have the right kind of healthy food. I need to make sure that my partner is on board with the schedule that we've set out, or I need to tidy my house before somebody comes over. That's all of this external stuff. And so that becomes what we relate to. In many ways, that helps us miss the point that we also have this whole internal experience happening. Why do we need the house to be tidy before people come in? Okay, well, it's because I don't want people to think that I'm dirty. I don't want people to perceive me as being sloppy or lazy. I feel self-conscious about the state of my home, right? So if you begin to deepen into what is driving that external motivation, we'll always find something that's deeper, something that points us back to this inner landscape, this inner landmark. So this 10 degrees of Pisces is asking us to become more aware, maybe than we usually are, of our inner landmarks and what is important and what are we really devoted to? Because this brings up that question of, am I devoted to running around to tidy my house before you come over? Or am I devoted to understanding why I feel like I don't want you to see me as a slob? Why do I feel like a slob in the first place? Like, why did that start? Where did that start? And so, to varying extents, we're all introspecting, at least if you're listening to this. I would say some people are definitely not introspecting. But that aside, the more introspection that you can do right now, the better. Just because this is where we're being taught how to be guided by a higher perspective. And when we can understand the driving forces, then we are not as run by all of that external human stuff. Because the external human stuff is very tiring, right? Do I look pretty enough? Do I look thin enough? Do people think I'm a good hostess? Am I saying the right things? Am I making the right kind of small talk, right? We start to go off into the eddies of, whew, it's exhausting. That's boring. That's giving me a headache. And the flip side of this 10-degree North Node Pisces North Node is that the South degree is at 10 degrees of Virgo. This is two heads looking out and beyond the shadows. This is talking about not letting our imagination distort our perception. So this is another way that we bring in our desire to be perceived, largely falls under imagination. And so the example I'm talking about is I went to visit a friend. We had to stop by their house to go in and they could drop something off. We ended up going inside to use the restroom. Their partner was in a panic because they hadn't tidied up the house before we showed up. My guess is that their partner's imagination was going wild. Oh my God, they're going to think we're dirty. They're going to have all of this blah, 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 blah. My perception as the guest was, I don't care what your house looks like. I don't care. I don't have to spend any time here other than going to the restroom. I've also had plenty of times when my house was in disarray. Like, it doesn't matter. So there's a mismatch in the perception, right? Their fantasy of, oh my God, they're going to think dot, dot, dot was completely different than my perception, which was whatever. This is your house. Like, of course, you live however you live. We have to be really careful right now as you're awake and aware to these things that, like I've been saying, like the storylines, right? What's the story that we're telling ourselves about what this means? How is your fantasy distorting your perception? So this is a long lesson and we're still in the thick of it. And it has not gone away. I don't know about you, but I keep having one experience after another. It's almost comical at this point. The amount of stressful experiences that are showing up in my reality, right? It's almost like the Mormons are knocking on the door wanting to convert me. Now it's the bug company wanting to sell me their bug services. Now it's the post office needing a signature. Now it's the neighbor kid selling Girl Scout cookies. It is relentless. Like, my doorbell just keeps ringing with all of this really deep stuff. But the point is that every time something stressful shows up, I am being asked, how does this mirror something that has been really difficult, that has distorted your sense of self, that has obscured you from seeing the truth? And so I encourage you to use every stressful thing that shows up for you right now as an invitation into deeper self-inquiry. So take a deep breath. And maybe you can ask that your higher self help you to remember that under stress, you don't need to pick up the phone and start yelling at somebody, but rather you can say, oh, what is this helping me to see? What is this teaching me right now? How am I being triggered into seeing an old holding pattern that I have? that comes in and really screws stuff up. Because the 12th and the 13th, we have the sun making a square to Chiron and Mars making a square to Chiron. So the sun and Mars both in Capricorn and Chiron in Aries. Capricorn and Aries are both cardinal signs. So it's that energy within us that begins new projects, that also wants to be a boss, wants to rule. And when the sun, our heart of hearts, is in conflict with Chiron, our wounding of identity, there are things to be explored. So, another example, I am sitting at lunch with one of my friends on my trip. They are very different than I am. We have very conflicting ways of seeing the world, which is fine. I don't get into it with people. I don't need to. Like I've shared before on this podcast, I talk to too many people that all have conflicting views with one another, with me. It doesn't matter what you think and what I think about the world, about politics. It doesn't matter. And they went off on a rant. And me sitting here shocked that this rant was happening. It was very unexpected. And also using all of these tools that I'm always talking to you guys about. And I'm right here with myself and I'm watching and I'm witnessing and I'm watching, wow, my heart is starting to beat. Oh, I'm feeling a little bit offended. Oh, I am shocked by how angry they are about this. Also, it's okay. You're okay. You don't have to panic. You don't have to get into an argument. You don't have to defend yourself. You don't really have to do much other than just sit right here in this present moment, just listening, nodding your head. Oh, okay. Okay, that's interesting. And so that is an example of how this sun, my heart, I'm with my heart. I'm right here with myself. I do not need any external validation because I'm already here with my heart. And I don't need to prove myself because I'm already here. I already know how I feel and what I think. And what could have in the past catapulted us into a big conflict, Chiron, right? Like, this is my identity and that's your identity. And we can't coexist having such different identities without at least having an argument about it. That was non existent. I just thought, wow, we are really different. And that's okay. And it was a blip and it passed. Afterwards, I was just contemplating saying, first of all, well, that was another person knocking on my door right there, asking me to see something about myself, right? And also, how totally appropriate for this astrology. We all have the ability to choose to be present. When we're present, when we are with ourselves, we are partnering with ourselves, we are our own best friend existing in our head, having a conversation. It's like, I don't need to yell at somebody and tell them they're wrong. I don't need to complain to the proverbial manager. I don't need to have a big stink. What's the point? I'm secure in who I am. I can be secure in who I am regardless of what other people are doing. And I think this is one of the big lessons right now, especially last week I talked about Venus, Sun, Mars, all coming in to make conjunctions with each other in the sign of Capricorn. And this week on the 17th, Mars and Mercury meet and they'll travel together for a few days. So Mars is our boundaries. It's anger. It's how we deal with anger. And it's really interesting. If you are an astrology person, you can go and look at somebody else's chart at their Mars sign. You want to look at the sign that their Mars is in, and you want to look at the house that it's in. And you can do this for yourself too. It is illuminating because once you get in and you see somebody else's Mars, you understand why they react the way that they do, why they get angry in a certain way, and why they assert their boundaries in a certain way. Like, it is really interesting. And in studying my own Mars sign, I get it. And so that has been a really healing process for me over the last few years, just understanding more about my Mars sign, because Mars teaches you about the nature of your boundaries and where your boundaries get really weak and floppy, or where they get way too rigid and they irritate people, or just where you can coexist in this really strong, grounded set of boundaries where you become safe and secure and immovable Nobody's going to push you around, but you also don't need to explode. On the 13th, we also have Mercury making an opposition to Jupiter. So Jupiter is in the sign of Cancer, where it's exalted. Mercury and Jupiter are very accustomed to being at odds with one another because Mercury is the small mind, it's the human mind, it's that part of us that's like, well, you're wrong. You know, the facts say this, and I'll send you a link. Like, that's really Mercury. Mercury is also the part of us that wants to connect and have conversations. So Mercury is a very fast moving energy. And then Jupiter is where we understand things, but from a higher level perspective. So again, this brings us back to some of that nodal stuff that I was talking about at the beginning, where we're learning how to be guided by a higher perspective and not so guided by that little punitive monkey mind that we have that wants to know everything and wants to gossip and dodge the truth so that it can come out on the side of being right, etc. So you might be up against some of that this week too, where you have to keep mediating between that little human mind that wants things to be the way that you think they should be and loves to get in there and argue and loves to condemn other people, and the part of you that's like, hey, there's more context to this situation than you are bringing in. And that's another thing for all of us, is this idea of context, which is why I encourage you to say it's not just about having a messy house and being embarrassed that other people are going to see it. There's so much more. There are so many different layers for what we're contending with right now. And the more aware of all of it, the better. It's like if you were cooking in a kitchen and all you were using were scrambled eggs and ketchup. Yeah, you could put together a decent meal with scrambled eggs and ketchup, but why would you ignore all of the spices or the extra accoutrements, right? Why wouldn't you cut up some peppers and onions in the fridge? You don't want to be thinking so small and so obvious right now. It's like there's so many beautiful things just on the outside of the small and obvious. And this is your encouragement to go ahead and start poking through the spice drawers. What else are we dealing with here? How can we make this whole situation more interesting or make more sense or just come out the other side more stable and grounded instead of activated? Now, on the 15th and on the 16th, we are looking at Venus coming into a trine with Uranus and the Sun coming into a trine with Uranus. So we're also looking on the 18th at the new moon in Capricorn. The Sun and the moon come together at 28 degrees of Capricorn, also going into a trine with Uranus. And this is a very interesting chart to look at because that puts Mars, Mercury, Sun, Moon, Venus, Pluto, and Vesta. That's 7 placements, all in a trine to Uranus. Uranus in Taurus being the energy of the stability, the money, the groundedness, the self-worth. Uranus saying, shake it up, do it differently, stop playing that game. Now, a trine is pretty harmonious energy, so thank goodness that we're dealing with all of these trines. So before I even get further into that, I want to talk about Vesta and Venus. Both Vesta and Venus are entering into Aquarius this week. Vesta actually changed signs on Sunday, and Venus is going to change signs on the 17th. If you remember, that 0 degrees of Aquarius is a pretty big number right now because December 21st of 2020, we had what astrologers call the Great Conjunction, which was Jupiter and Saturn coming to meet at 0 degrees of Aquarius. We've also had some other action. Pluto has moved into Aquarius, into 0 Aquarius over the last few years and has hit that a few different times. A great conjunction speaks to how reality organizes itself for the next 20 years or so. And that 0 degrees of Aquarius is about the collective. It's about humanity. It is also about how we do things differently. And Uranus rules Aquarius. So this is all sort of thematic here. This is technology. This is science. This is breaking the rules in favor of things that work better. This is also about rebellion and conformity. And so it brings in all of these questions. So at the beginning, I was talking about a collective. At the beginning of this talk, I was talking about the collective and how we're all so different. We're all very similar, but we're all so different. And if you're listening to this, you are probably in the United States and you know this, but I do have people listening in Australia and in Europe. The United States, even though we are one country, regionally and even by state, people are very different. It can be a completely different set of customs and cultures and food and ways of living that you find as you travel through different regions and different states in the US. And because I was traveling this week, I was really seeing that and thinking about how cool it was that we were all so different, but also the implications of that, especially as we are in such a tenuous place right now in the United States in terms of the state governments, the federal government. This is a very tricky time right now, but it is interesting to look through the lens of how is reality in the United States and also around the world organizing itself for the next 20 years? And what kind of rebellion are we going to see? And what kind of conformity are we going to see? And so when we watch both Venus and Vesta enter into this 0 degrees, we can also go back into that question and say, oh, because Vesta is the sacred flame. So we'll just talk about that for a minute. We each have a Vesta in our chart, and I did several good talks on Vesta in my Astrology for Awakening series. You can check that out under the name of that playlist on YouTube. It's also on Star Narratives. Vesta has lessons to teach us about where we give our focus and what burns us out. This piece around where are we focusing right now? And is it in alignment? How do you feel about world events? How do you feel about what you're reading on the news, about what you're seeing, and also about how all of these quote unquote personal issues that come knocking at your door, are you getting a sense of what is important for me to focus on? I can't focus on everything. I can't solve every single problem. I can seek to understand a problem if that feels in alignment, but I can't necessarily solve it. And I certainly can't solve it externally. I need to figure out how to move forward, and this relates to 10 degrees of Pisces, North Node. I need to figure out how to move forward without the external validation, without saying, well, is it okay with this person if I move forward? Is it going to upset this person if I make this decision? Is it going to take care of a whole demographic of people if I do it this way? Is it going to hurt a whole demographic of people if I do it this way? Of course, these are logical questions that we ask ourselves. But the truth is that Vesta says, bring your focus to your own internal flame, because you are not useful if you're burnt out. You can't scatter all of your energy, and then where do you pull your energy from when it's all scattered? And so Vesta being the energy of our own internal temple that says, come in. Imagine you're in a temple. You can't walk into a temple with your phone talking on FaceTime. You're going to be too loud. People are going to look at you. You are going to miss the point of being in the temple. When I was traveling, we visited a temple, and it was absolutely stunning to walk into this space where there was total silence and there was nothing to do but stare at the wall. And you might walk in and think, well, what am I going to do? I can't just sit here and stare at a wall. That's boring. That's not productive. I need to take a picture. I need to check my email. I need to do something. But the answer was no. There's nothing to do except sit here, be in the silence, come back to yourself, recalibrate, stare at the wall. And it was such a profound experience to allow ourselves to do that with no agenda other than just sitting there and being with ourselves, being with our different versions of God. And that's what Vesta at 0 degrees of Aquarius is reminding you to do. Yes, we all have a mission and purpose. Yes, we are all getting more insight into how we're going to move forward into the next 18 years. But for right now, you have to come back to yourself. You can't be all chaotic if you want to really understand how your reality is reorganizing itself. And that Mercury mind wants you to be chaotic. That's how it thrives. Think about all these things. Worry about all these things. Focus on whether somebody's going to see your dirty house. Express your opinion that you're so angry about. That is all distraction. and we all do it. But this week, there is a calling to go into your internal temple. And as Venus enters this same degree, Venus says, what are your values? Don't you remember? You have things that you really love. You have things that make you feel grounded and stable. Venus is the ruler of Taurus, and Taurus is the garden. And Taurus says, think about how beautiful it is to put seeds in the earth. And a few months later, you have beautiful flowers, and you can smell them, and you can look at them, and you can watch the butterflies and the bumblebees feed off of them. And every time you look out into your garden, you are captivated once again by their beauty. And you can cut some of them and bring them into your house and make your living room smell beautiful. This is Venus saying, don't get so caught up in the vanity, in the wealth, in the distortion of how you need to be perceived. Come back right here, 0 degrees of Aquarius energy. Your reality is reorganizing itself. And we don't want to have a bunch of crapola in our new reality, do we? I've shared how the last few years have been this journey for me of looking at stuff. I sold a house. I had to get rid of all the stuff in the house. My dad died. We've had to get all of his stuff out of his house. And now a new death, a whole other house to get rid of. What I'm seeing is it's all just stuff, and we can't take it with us. And of course, we know this. This is not new news. But the truth is that we get so caught up in the Venus acquiring, like, I want it, I need it. It's going to make me happy. It's going to prove that I'm something. It's going to help people perceive me as important or as successful. And the truth is, like, I talked about this in Taurus season and probably in Libra season too in my Astrology for Awakening talks. And those are great talks. If you guys haven't listened to those, I go through all these facets of all of the sun signs. There's 70 some episodes. They are well worth listening to just to learn more about yourself. But Venus gets really carried away in appearances. I want to look successful. I want to look beautiful. I want to look young. I want to look like I have a lot. I want to look bougie, all of this stuff. And at the end of the day, what happens? It just becomes somebody else's problem to deal with. None of us that are blessed enough to live many, many years maintain our youthful beauty. Okay? So we are recalibrating our sense of our values here. What's really important? Am I growing something that I'm going to get a lot of pure enjoyment out of? Or am I just greedily acquiring stuff and doing everything that I can to look as young as possible and as thin as possible and whatever else your vanity requires of you? So these are deeper questions. And maybe it's because I'm in my Chiron return. But this brings me back to this new moon. So we have this new moon on the 18th, 28 degrees of Capricorn, trining Uranus, along with Mars, Mercury, Sun, Moon, Venus, Pluto, and Vesta, all trining Uranus. Uranus in Taurus. Recalibrating around what your values are, what's important. It's coming on hot and heavy. So like I've been saying, 2026, the energy starts to shift pretty fast. So even though, yes, we are still in all of that Piscean slog of all of your deepest, darkest stuff coming up to slap you in the face, trying to get your attention so that you look underneath the actual situation that has triggered it. And you get in there and you're like, what is really going on? Because shifting and changing, a recalibration of the values, a reorganization of the reality, and we are on board for it, whether we want it or not. So if you're somebody that is pretty superficial and not super conscious, that's fine. You're still going to be dealing with this stuff. It's just going to look different. It's going to be harder because you're going to be in resistance, and it's going to be all about what keeps going wrong and what keeps irritating you and ticking you off. And you're going to feel powerless. If you're more conscious about it and you're like, oh, here's another person knocking on my door. What does this guy want? Okay, why did this guy show up right now? Then we pull back our power and we say, oh, this is here for me. This is here to teach me. So back to my example, I'm sitting there with my friend and they're on some diatribe about something political that is the antithesis of what I happen to believe to be true. An unconscious response would have been to get into an argument and be mad and arms crossed against my chest and this sucks and I can't stand this person. How exhausting. Instead, you can use those situations as an entry point into like, wow, oh my God, that was bizarre. And also, it's okay. And also, I can see how it was perfect that I got triggered like that because it just helped me do that thing where I'm reminded that I can count on myself and count on myself to maintain my equilibrium, to not lose the plot, to not freak out. And really, with this Capricorn energy, which is the energy of the government, the energy of the governing bodies, we are tired of governing bodies that lose their proverbial shit. We can't trust them. They are trigger happy. Our entire lives, we have been, I think it's safe to say, let down by authority. And these are Capricorn lessons where we take back our own authority and we say, listen, I haven't always been able to trust the adults in my life, the government, the teachers, the bosses, because, and maybe this is just me, but I feel like my experience was that every time that you would get a teacher involved, they would make the problem worse. Bosses would always come in with some new policy they were going to implement that made it worse. So, this is our opportunity to take back the power. And this is on a personal level where you say, I trust myself. I'm not going to screw this up. And if I do, I'm going to learn from it. And I'm going to repair so that it's not hanging around in the field forever, causing future distortion. All right, well, how does that feel? So just before I close, take a deep breath. Come back to this present moment. And just notice what you are feeling in your body in this moment. Are you breathing? All right, I'll leave you with that, and I will talk to you all next week.